This is the BTOWN podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the BTOWN podcast. Bill Bartholomew here with you for new episodes now every Tuesday and Thursday at ripodcast.com or wherever you like to get shows. Today we have a discussion with Nicole Renzulli, a Cranston City Councilwoman who is a self-described progressive Republican. And it's interesting because I think back to, it was 2019, March 2019, where I did an interview with Matt Allen of WPRO on his podcast. And I remember bringing up the term progressive outside of the context of a specific political party or specific set of ideological goals, but more so with just the idea of moving the world forward. And there are obvious human rights and social justice and science-oriented thought processes and decisions that need to be made that, to me anyway, live well outside of the confines of a debate of political opinion on a budget or whatever it may be. Now, that's not to say that the budget doesn't impact how we address those societal ills. Obviously, funding formulas are critical. But I've been bogged down maybe in a way in my head, and it's something that I've tried to work through, this idea of moving backwards into the Stone Ages with some of the ideas that we hear coming out around whether it's critical race theory or, the whole pandemic. We've seen some of these just highly immature positions being taken on the right that to me are like, where are you getting this from? Who are you talking to here? Not to dismiss some of the concerns that have come up about whether it be oversight from the General Assembly as to decisions being made by the governor's office, decisions being made inside of schools, whatever it is. It's not to say, whatever. But some of the positions and some of the messaging has just turned whatever remained of the public-facing image of the GOP, including here in Rhode Island, into something of, in many cases, a lot of fringe discussions. And a few weeks ago on a Lively Experiment, one of the things that I brought up, it was my outrage, as we call it, Lively Experiment on PBS, was that it's time for the Rhode Island Republican Party to stop playing to the fringes. Stop embracing some of this garbage and get back to business as an opposition party in terms of political strategy, not so much on the social issues that are, at this point, anybody who wants to see the world become a better place knows are absurd. So it's relieving at a certain level to know that there are people in this state who identify as Republicans, who are elected officials as Republicans, but take progressive stances on social issues. You know what I mean? Like, that's relieving. Like, that's where we need to get to, where we move beyond, like, the political spectrum shifts to a point where some of these things that are popping up on a regular basis, I mean, just the former president, Donald Trump's speech the other day, how he's going to pardon people who were involved in January 6th if he gets elected. Oh, my God. This is craziness. It's beyond belief that this could be a position embraced by a major political party here in the United States, regardless of whether or not they identify as conservative. To me, it's way outside of the political spectrum. So Councilwoman Nicole Renzulli first came into my purview as someone who was pro-science, pro-public health measures to curb the pandemic, trying to stand up against some of the nonsense being pushed by people with respect to critical race theory, and things like that. And we did a radio interview last fall, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a space. She occupies a space where legitimate, intelligent discussion and debate can take place. And although perhaps not every single issue when you go down the checklist is something that I agree with, and frankly, I don't know because we didn't actually go super deep into platform in this interview. The idea that we don't have legitimate inter-party debate here in Rhode Island is disturbing. And we need it as a state to be able to move forward. Because in those debates, in those intelligent conversations, that's where new ideas are spawned. That's where collaborations will be developed. That's where ways to win over more buy-in on particular issues will be formed. Pathways to quote-unquote progressive goals need to be birthed out of more than the progressive left. It needs to be embraced by moderate and institutional Democrats, which we see on some issues here in Rhode Island. You know, the pressure that progressive Democrats put on the mainstream Democrats here in Rhode Island is yielding some significant results. But for those ideas to be sold on a bigger level, on a higher level, it's going to require more buy-in from independents and, frankly, members of the GOP. And it's going to require a debate and discussion on particulars, again, that's steeped in maturity, not hysterics, and not some of this stuff that as I allude to in the episode here, it just makes me sad. Come on now. Please. I mean, some of these people, folks, I get all kinds of email and tagged in tweets about how I'm a stooge for the state, you know, I'm a Nazi and this, that, and the other because of positions I've taken on school masking or on, you know, public health measures or whatever it is. Now, I also get a lot of messages and, frankly, many more from those of you who agree with my positions. But that's not to say it doesn't disturb me or sometimes make me sad to see some of the things that are coming out right now. So reining in this nonsense is going to come from a faction of the GOP that Nicole Renzulli, Councilwoman Renzulli, who's our guest today, describes as being a progressive Republican. And I think it's a model that, whether or not it's going to be the dominant faction of Rhode Island's GOP, it's something that definitely needs to be embraced and included if they're going to grow. And I think for our state, I think it's important that we have that kind of debate and discussion on a mature level on a regular basis and get out of this. Come on, man. I mean, some of these discussions, I mean, what is going on here, right? I mean, it's craziness. So Councilwoman Renzulli here today on the podcast, breaking down what it means to be a progressive Republican. Remember, you can support the independent journalism, opinion, analysis, and entertainment that BTOWN provides by becoming a BTOWN insider. Simply head to patreon.com/BartholomewTown for as little as $3 per month. Your contribution can help support this program. Okay, so today we have an interesting conversation, and you know, you're someone that really has, you know, in a lot of ways embraced and embodied the Republican Party of Rhode Island of yesteryear. You know, there's been a strain of, I guess it kind of applies throughout New England, sort of like the New England conservative, which has been traditionally much different than what you'd experience in the South or in other parts of the country or even globally. And it's a time right now where taking that kind of stance for you on certain issues, especially around issues of health and science and things that to me are apolitical and just seem like, hey, this is kind of common sense. It puts you in a spot where within your own party, you're kind of ostracized. And that's what's so wacky about this moment in time, but also it's something that kind of makes you stand out. And there are others in the state that are sort of embodying that type of approach. But I guess you describe yourself on Twitter as a progressive Republican. I love that term because it makes a lot of sense to me. I guess explain to everybody, what does it mean to you to be a progressive Republican?
So really, I would say that I, am fiscally more conservative. But socially, I'm a little bit more liberal, and really, I just think that it's part of the purpose of the government to be helping people and moving forward. Like, change is good if we're moving forward. So I think progress is important, and the word progressive has been kind of turned into a dirty word in some circles, or it's just been taken over by the Democrats. And I don't think you have to be a Democrat. You don't have to be in any certain party to be progressive and be wanting to move the state, your city, the country forward. So that's really what, where I sit with it. Like when Teddy Roosevelt was a progressive Republican, that's where I see being a progressive Republican. I think that it confuses a lot of people. It kind of puts me more in the, in a moderate category. But that's how I look at it.
One of the things that has been so bizarre over the last 6 years or so, really with the rise of Trumpism, and it can be paralleled globally right now in South America. There's certainly a lot of populism happening that is reflected on the right in places like Brazil, and on the left in places all throughout South America. So this isn't just a Rhode Island thing or anything like that, but the rise of populism on the right in the United States and Trumpism that has come from it has seemingly become the dominant or loudest voice in the room for Republicans. We even hear now in the congressional race, Alan Fung thinking about jumping in, and people saying, well, he might lose to a Jessica de la Cruz because he's not conservative enough. And if he does win, then running in a statewide election, being a member of the GOP, he'll never win with certain voters in the independent sector. How does the Republican Party, at least focusing here in Rhode Island, get to a point where these sort of, in my opinion, fringe issues aren't the dominant discussion, but instead, as you described, fiscally conservative ideals and things like that? How does that become what the GOP is known for here in Rhode Island, more so than like masks don't work, or, we got to lock down our borders entirely and all these types of things?
Well, personally, I think we have to stop, within our own party, giving people a purity test. And if we don't fit in right with every single, the ideology of being a Republican, then, we're kind of tossed aside. Like we don't fit in this box, because I don't think that, if you look in Rhode Island, here in Cranston, there's more independence than anyone else. And you're really, making them choose between two things that they don't really like, when you're extreme on either side. So I think that as a party, we need to come together and realize that we're not going to agree on everything, but if we don't unite, then we're never going to win. And it's just going to keep going how it's going. So someone like an Alan Fung has a great shot in this district. He was an amazing mayor for 12 years, and he could win this district. But like you said, if he has to go against, a Jessica de la Cruz, who is, a little bit more to the right, he could, lose in that primary, and then he can't go forward, but he could essentially win the district.
What are some of the issues right now specifically that you're concerned about? I know you've been a vocal person on Twitter, and we've even talked on the radio about some issues surrounding COVID protocols and things like that. But what are the things right now that you'd like for the GOP to have less of a purity test on, and be more accepting of alternative viewpoints within the party? Well,
other than, like you said, with COVID, I would say, CRT is a popular thing that people are talking about now. And they're going really far to an extreme where as far as I know, CRT is a very high level course. It's not being taught in our schools. And teaching accurate history and teaching CRT are two very different things, but CRT is a great buzzword to go with. And, you're going to alienate a lot of people in the middle who want their kids to learn accurate history. And it really bothers me, because I think that we're pitting people against each other right within the party. And that means, we're never going to move forward. So that would definitely be one. And the continued, division with public health is really hard, because people want to follow science. And sometimes it is, the loudest voice in the room. You're hearing, there was just that poll that I think it said somewhere, forgive me if I'm wrong on exactly the numbers, that 80% of parents polled were in favor of masks in schools. But you wouldn't know that if you go on the internet, because that's not necessarily the loudest voice. And are they really, that doesn't mean they're pro-mask in schools, like they want their kids to have to be masked. I have always said, I would prefer that my children don't have to wear masks at school. I prefer that my athletes don't need to run races. I'm a track coach in masks. But if that's what we have to do to get out of this pandemic, then I'm willing to follow the science and do that. And I think, we need to get together and unite around, some of these issues rather than being so tribalistic.
Yeah, you're referencing the Hassenfeld poll, which I think it is about 80%. And that's the other thing too, with the masking stuff. It's like, I can't stand wearing the mask. I mean, it's uncomfortable. And then there's also the side of it of, being a musician myself and seeing what it's done to performances. And then in terms of sports, as you referenced from a track coach perspective. And I actually think that we're going to see a change in policy for masking for athletes pretty soon, because it's absurd that college athletes are somehow exempt from this, but then, high school athletes are not. And then you've got all the different extra scholastic facilities for indoor soccer kind of setting their own rules and policies. So it's all over the place. And it seems like the best thing is probably to move away from the mask for athletes. But, with the specific issue right now in Rhode Island, there is no, although we're hearing whisperings of some people, there's no candidate for governor right now. In fact, there's, you got Bob Lancia and you've got Jessica De La Cruz in the congressional race. But as far as like that heavy hitter statewide voice that can be out of the gate a very credible candidate in the governor's race, let's say, why do you think that is? Why would someone like a Blake Filippi not run, not see it as an opportunity? And you can't put yourself inside his brain, but what is blockading the GOP right now from being a more credible statewide player?
To be honest, I don't know Blake Filippi well enough, to kind of speak for him in that sense. I think that he would be an excellent candidate. I think he's a great speaker. I like listening to him. He seems, more rational in a lot of senses than some of the people that you hear. But if it's not, he needs his voice where he is. So if it's not going to, if everyone's not going to back him and he doesn't have a shot, then maybe he's not going to go. Maybe that's not intelligent to go for it. That means we just lose one more representative. That's why I think if we pile on a bunch of people going into, the congressional race, people who are already seated, only one of them can win. Only one person can win possibly. You know what I mean? Then they're going to lose. We're going to lose more representation in Providence. So it's a tough thing. I think we should be spreading people out to try and win statewide offices rather than, competing against each other for everything.
Yeah, it does seem like a circular firing squad at times when those scenarios take place. BTOWN. For daily content on all things Rhode Island and beyond, follow me on Twitter at Bill Bartholomew and join me on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Just search for me, Bill Bartholomew.
Now back to BTOWN.
We need opposition, regardless of whether you agree or disagree. I mean, obviously, there's certain parameters that are on both sides of the political spectrum that aren't practical or ethical that we don't need in the conversation. But within the general understanding of the American political tradition, we need opposition voices that are credible, whether that be internally in the Democratic Party with progressives challenging institutional Democratic ideals, or institutional Democrats challenging over-optimism from progressives. That's all important. But then we also need a further balance here. And I feel like in Rhode Island, I think most people would agree, we're just lacking that the debate on matters of fiscal oversight, on matters that are traditionally held by conservatives, or positions that are traditionally held by conservatives. So do you think that it's possible in the next decade that we could have a statewide GOP that has more than 15 offices? They say, you can fit the Republican Party at the State House into a phone booth. Do you see a pathway for the GOP to grow, and not only grow in terms of pushing fringe candidates that can be ambassadors for some of these hysterical positions, but can actually serve in an oversight capacity in a balanced, meaningful way that through debate and discussion, we can arrive in a better place than when we started?
I think that, being from Cranston, the Republican Party in Cranston, it seems to be maybe I think it's the biggest city committee in the state. And we do have a Republican mayor, and we consistently, have held the majority. We do things a little bit different. It's a little bit more open. People are a little bit more accepting and moderate, and we don't always agree on everything. We certainly don't always agree on everything, but we work together because ultimately we're part of a team. And I think that if we kind of spread that and the state party adopted that and we became a team where we're all supporting each other, even though we're not agreeing on absolutely everything, then we can grow and we can be competitive and we can invite more people in. I have been saying that the party can have multiple shades of red. It doesn't just need to be bright red over here. We have to mix other people in, or we're never going to go anywhere because we're always going to be dominated by the left. And I don't think anyone wants that. I saw on Twitter, I did an interview last week, and a couple of people said, "Oh, she's so genuine. We really appreciate what she had to say, but she's not enough over here. She's not enough Republican for us to vote for her." Well, do you want to vote for, am I more Republican than the Democrat that's going to win maybe if you don't vote for me? Because there's not enough people all the way to the right. We've already shown that. Otherwise, we would be doing a little bit better in the state, I think. So we have to kind of adapt to what's going on and what people want. And people in the middle want someone who might be a little bit more in the middle. And I just think that's more people than, the loudest voices screaming.
No question about it, especially on Twitter, where it's literally like 5 people that, they constantly tag me and they say, I'm a stooge for, I'm a spokesperson for the state or this, that, the other. And it always has to do, for the most part, with those 2 issues you raised, either their understanding of critical race theory or the health stuff, which, again, it's just like, it's demoralizing at times. Sometimes it actually makes me sad to think that there are people who are just so suspicious of expertise that they're willing to use, a fringe doctor here or a YouTube video there or some anecdote they've created themselves as their North Star politically. And it's like, boy, that's too bad, because there's a lot of great ideas across the spectrum, agree or disagree with them, that should be heard. And that stuff, it's like, it just clogs up the pipes of debate and discussion.
Oh, yeah. I think that the pandemic could have conceivably brought the country together, but seemingly it increased the divide. And, there was a time when science was science, and we were listening to the people who were professionals in public health, not everyone on Twitter or on Facebook, because now everyone has an opinion, and that's great. You should. But what makes your opinion more valid than someone who is a doctor and went to school for this and is, this is what they've chosen to do. We don't do that, for a lawyer. I don't go and just represent myself. No, I hire a lawyer because that's their job and that's what they're supposed to be good at. And we've just kind of moved away from that. And it's scary. It really is scary.
Yeah, it's actually terrifying. And like I said, sad sometimes. I'll see some of the things that people say, and I'll kind of say, oh, who is this person? I'll kind of look into them and I'll be like, where did this person get pulled into this world? I think of Patricia Morgan recently with her, I had a black friend tweet that put Rhode Island on the map globally for all the wrong reasons. And, I've had Patricia Morgan on this show a number of times. We've been on Lively Experiment on PBS together. I've covered her extensively, or I had covered her extensively in 2018 during the gubernatorial race. And, she would say things and I go, wait a minute, what are you talking about sometimes? But I never got the sense of this brand being what she would use to be her marquee. And it makes me sad, because it's like, oh man, that's too bad that you would want to be perceived as somebody who's an ambassador for this kind of Newsmax, OAN, hyper anti-critical race theory type of character. And it's like, well, that's not going to win in Rhode Island, clearly. And it's also makes you look bad, and your legacy is going to be tainted by this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm giving some people too much credit. I'm not sure, but sometimes I like to think that they're using it as, some kind of stepping stone to end up on Tucker Carlson. You know what I mean? Like they can't I deep in my heart don't want to think that that's what people actually, believe. But maybe I'm giving people too much credit to be doing it for publicity purposes, because I think I could be a, more known Republican in the state if I started talking about that, or if I jumped on the, the CRT, the kind of bandwagon. Like I was on that school committee meeting with Nicole Solas, the mom who wanted, the curriculum. And I spoke at that meeting purely based on the fact that I thought that she should have been granted access to the curriculum, not what it blew up to from that. Like I can have no part of. But there are things that we do agree upon, within the party, even with Patricia Moore. I'm sure if we sat down and had a conversation, there would be a lot of things that we really agreed upon. But because she's so loud on things we don't agree upon, I can't be associated with it.
Very well said. Last couple of minutes here, as we look towards the future, do you see yourself ever running for House, Senate, Lieutenant Governor, Governor, Congress, or are you somebody who, you're happy at the municipal level and you have a life outside of politics, obviously family, coaching, these are all things that, can be self-identifiers in and of themselves. So where do you stand? Because I think there's a lot of people who are looking for someone like you, someone like a Barbara Ann Fenton Fung, to rise through the parties so as to give a different perspective, or an ambassador for different perspectives to independents and just the state as a whole. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to take it one step at a time and, see where I can be effective and prove myself and kind of see where I fall. But Barbara Ann Fenton Fung, I respect her so much. She's a mentor of mine. And yes, I would, love to run for a state office one day. I don't, want to put the cart before the horse and jump into anything. But this is definitely very, very important to me. It's very important to me to serve, my community at any level that I can build to, for sure. But you need the support. You need the support as well. So if I can't make it here and I'm not going over there as an independent, are you making it anywhere? I don't really know. It's worked in Warwick, but you don't see it really working anywhere. So it's going to depend on how the party grows and if they want to, accept people who don't fit into the box, because I'm going to be Nicole Renzulli no matter what letter is next to my name on a ballot.
Yeah, something that both parties face challenges with right now, no doubt about it. But certainly there's been more inroads made on the Democratic side with progressives, both in terms of elected officials and in terms of just policy. I mean, we're seeing that right now. My last question. So you're a track, cross country, and strength coach. Rhode Island has such an important relationship with interscholastic sports and sports in general, and especially a place like Cranston. The community level. You think about the Cranston Bowl and what that means, and sort of the tradition there. Where is Rhode Island sports? Coming out of COVID, a lot of kids lost a year. It's been a challenging time, but where do you see the biggest need right now for investment in terms of Rhode Island sports as a whole, for us to continue to be able to produce athletes that can compete for Division I scholarships and in the professional ranks and so on and so forth? We, from time to time, have that. We have the Rocco Baldelli here and there, but for the most part, we're not Florida. It's an area that's important to people, and it could be a good flag for the state. Where do we need to grow?
We personally, I'd say we need more facilities. We need more indoor facilities. So, I mean, I can speak to track personally. We run all our races at Providence Career and Technical Center, and that's one indoor track. You go to New York, I take my athletes and my children all run. We're going to I'm always in Connecticut, New Jersey, New York. The facilities that they have there, they're not only for track, but they have indoor tracks. In the middle of them, they have basketball courts. The floor goes over it. You can have lacrosse, soccer, whatever. We need the training facilities for people to train in the winter. I run my athletes outside. Well, there's snow on the track in Cranston. So other than shoveling a lane, where are these kids, going to run? Where are kids playing football in the winter? We need facilities, and, the kids are there. The kids want to play, whether it's at private school or public school. We have a lot of great athletes, but Florida, you're training all year round. I went to college in Florida. I have friends who coach there still, and they are training all year round. So that's going to give you, an incredible advantage. We need the facilities, and I'm hoping that, if we build them, they will come, kind of thing.
Yeah. Sculpting the future through athletics, through the arts. These are things that it comes down to facilities. Like you said, it comes down to embracing, the thought process that goes with having great athletics, great arts, great academics. Obviously, all of these things are flags to be attractive for Rhode Island to be a global player. And it seems basic, but I mean, yeah, like, where's the facility upgrade? And you're right. Like, when I was in New York for a decade, I mean, I was heavily involved in soccer as a referee primarily, and just the facilities there year round, you could referee 15 games a day in February in New York, and all of them would be at a fantastic facility. And we're just missing that here. And you're totally right. So
it's the economic driver too, because I know it, we go to New York, we go to these big meets, we're spending money, we're going to the restaurants. If we want to have economic development, these facilities, they do that too. So it's a driver all around. Kids who play sports do better at school. From every socioeconomic class, kids who play sports and do arts and have something else to look forward to always do better at school, because they need to do well at school in order to be eligible to play the sports or music or whatever it is that they're into. And I think that, I love being a coach because I get to be that extra adult for children who, maybe don't have the best home life. Or they do, but they need that extra adult, like, just to reach out to for help that they're not asking their parents for, because, everyone has a thing with their parents when they're teenagers. Right. So I think it's just important. The more, teams you have, the more coaches you're going to have. It's just it's like a domino effect, and everyone is going to do better, and business will do better. Kids are healthier if they're playing sports. We have so many, there's still an childhood obesity problem in this country, which, all these different problems have exacerbated the pandemic on top of it. Do you know what I mean? So sports and recreation can do a lot.
Completely agree. Councilwoman, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Rhode Island's podcast of record, BTOWN.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.